Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for recognizing me, and thank you for allowing me to participate in this important discussion. The topic of this hearing, the future of human spaceflight, is critically important to my constituents, and of course it's an honor to be here with our esteemed guest heroes today. My first real job was at Pad 17, as was our first panelist, and Dr. Zuber, I'm glad you got to be at Pad 17, which is there no longer. As a young man, I got to work on the rocket ship that took you to the moon, Mr. Armstrong, and brought you safely back. The third stage of Douglas subcontractor, and unfortunately, Mr. Cernan, I was laid off before it was your turn to fly, and me and a couple dozen thousand of our best friends. But the future of spaceflight, human spaceflight, is critically important to the Space Coast that I represent. The economy, of course, is all politics being local, is inextricably entwined with our space program. The retirement of the shuttle program was a major blow, obviously, to the district. Mine and Representative Adams, who has the adjoining district, and we share the space centers. I was encouraged by the promise of the commercial crew, and I think it's our greatest near-term hope for returning our astronauts to low Earth orbit and the International Space Station. Commercial crew, however, is both a needed commercial capacity and a NASA-led exploration capacity needed in order to retain our standing as the world's greatest seafaring nation, and also to remain our dominance of the ultimate military high ground, which is space. Space to us is what Golan Heights is to Israel. And it's ironic, space and Israel are the two subjects I've found here in Congress as I've been here that are absolutely nonpartisan, where there are no party lines, even blurred. They're in step on both sides, thank goodness. After a contentious summer, including the first ever congressional subpoenas in NASA's history, NASA at long last revealed their initial plans for space launch system that will carry the Orion capsule on the future exploration missions. While many of us welcome that announcement, the administration has still not set out an adequate vision, and I intended, except you've made yourself so very clear, all of you in prior testimony, to get your positions on the necessity of us returning to the moon. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, all of you have been very explicit in thinking that is a necessary step for this nation. Am I correct? You're all shaking your head, yes. Thank you very much. I've got more questions than I'm going to have time to ask, but I'm going to start with one that I'm really curious about with Dr. Griffin. Current NASA plans seem to suggest that the use of orbital fuel depots to enable exploration missions into deep space. What are your views? Is this a practical approach as a substitute for heavy launch vehicles, do you think?
Well, the short answer is no, but this time let me expand on that just a little bit. I think it certainly requires more study, but I think the onus is on those who want to advocate this approach to show that it makes sense, because first of all, it flies in the face of experience across all other transportation sectors that humans have yet built. The conventional wisdom is reflected in things like mile-long railroad trains. We don't send 2 or 3 cars. We have huge containerized shipping platforms. We try not to send small boats. We use supertankers, not, again, small boats. The air transport industry uses commuter jets for short-haul transportation, but if you're going coast to coast or intercontinentally, we are gravitating towards 787s and Airbus 380s. Either everyone else is wrong, or space transportation is somehow different, or depots just don't make sense. So I'm in the camp that says, so far, I haven't seen the argument from an engineer's point of view that they make sense. Earth orbit is short-haul transportation, so therefore we need smaller rockets appropriately sized to the crew vehicles we want to do. That's the 25 or so metric ton class Ares 1, or an equivalent, right, because Ares 1 was canceled. If you want to go to the moon or beyond, well, that's a long trip. That's a big trip. The depot advocates will say, well, 70% of what you need is fuel. Well, okay, but 30% is not. 30% is really big hardware, and so that is most easily accomplished by using a heavy lift launch vehicle. Well, once you have it, once you own a heavy lifter, just as once you own a supertanker or once you own a Boeing 787, well, then the economies of operation of those devices call upon you to use them as often as possible. As Mr. Armstrong pointed out earlier, all transportation devices have economies of scale. Generally, the bigger that you can build them, the lower your overhead. So no, I am not yet convinced, strictly as an engineer, I'm not convinced at all that the lowest cost approach to deep space exploration has fuel depots as its answer. I just don't see it. I wish it did, because obviously that would make the problem much easier. So I wish it did. I just don't think it does. And I'm primarily concerned that advocates of fuel depots are trying to answer the question of what kind of human space exploration is most suited to commercial space, rather than asking the question, how can commercial space best enable human exploration?
Correct. Mr. Chairman, can I get one little follow-up?
Without objection, we have a little one.
Yeah, just address some comments. I love commercial space. Roots on the Thor before it was even the Delta, where yours were. And we need commercial space, but I'm a little bit chagrined when people say that commercial space is such a threat, or manned spaceflight, human spaceflight is such a threat to commercial. As I recall, there's never been a NASA mechanic or electrician that's assembled into these rockets yet. I remember going back to your Apollo rockets. We had Boeing on the first stage, Lockheed on the second stage, Douglas on the third stage. IBM was the instrumentation unit, Grumman was the payload. I mean, I think those are all commercial activities, and I think they spawn commercial growth of other activities. And so just quick nod of the head, agreement, disagreement?
But it had NASA insight and oversight, which commercial space today, to my knowledge, does not have.
And should have.
Well, sir, if I might add, if the development is being done with public funds, then I think it is only correct to have oversight of government agencies into those developments. If a development is being carried out on private funds, and then the product or the service is offered to the market for whatever the traffic will bear, then I would pat them on the back and say, good on them. But if public funds are going to be involved in the development, then there has to be public oversight to ensure proper responsibility and accountability for those funds.
Gentleman's time has expired, and the questions